you support Jeremy Corbyn, and we know that you wholeheartedly support Jeremy Corbyn, and we're just wondering if you can give any advice to his supporters on how they can further support him without damaging themselves.
Well, one of the big things that we're having to do now is that people, except me that's on the executive, can be members of the shadow cabinet, and because there aren't too many, they're having to double up on different jobs. For instance, Angela Layton, who is a left-wing member of the new shadow cabinet, she has to speak on education at question time and on health. Dave Anderson, who used to be a new P member, now Unison, waiting the pitch for a while. He actually is the Speaker for the Shadow Cabinet on Northern Ireland and Scotland. Yeah. And then we've got another one doing Wales and Leader of the House. And what people should understand out there is that these people are doing a magnificent job, mainly because, or entirely because, the right-wing element in the Shadow Cabinet, the previous Shadow Cabinet, have just walked away. Yeah. And it's like handing the Tories the opportunity to make snide remarks every time one of our people gets up to speak. Yeah. And they do it continually. I mean, it's in a way that the old Shadow Cabinet, or certain members of it, not all of them, are acting like the UDA. Yes. In the pitch strike. And the other intriguing thing is that the right wing of the Parliamentary Labour Party want Jeremy to stand for re-selection, and have forced him into it, having been elected by 250,000 people initially. Is having to stand for re-election for leader, whilst most of the people in the right wing of the Parliamentary Labour Party don't want re-selection for themselves. So there is that ought to be explained in the press, but isn't. I mean, there is a parallel which I have quoted a few times, namely, when we had another left-wing leader elected in 1981, namely Michael Foot, who had left-wing credentials, like Jeremy. Probably they didn't like him because he didn't wear the proper clothes, just the same. The right-wing election committee, in the run-up to the 83 election, had got Michael Foot as the Labour candidate. Yeah. What happened? They had a meeting 10 days before the poll, and this is all on tape, and they decided, finally, realising they were a bit too close to the election, they were going to replace him. And they finally decided that they wouldn't, and they sent out Jim Mortimer, the then General Secretary of the Labour Party, to tell the assembled press people that Michael Foot is still our candidate 10 days before the voting. I mean, what a send-off. That's how bad it is. That's why people should realise today, as compared to 81, the SDP had left the Labour Party. There is no doubt that Progress, which is financed by Sainsbury's, is like a party within a party, together with money. Yes. And that's hardly ever mentioned.
So, would you say that there seems to be an attempt from the established right of the Labour Party to subvert the democracy of the election by recent actions of the NEC installing a voting ban on new members?
Well, they go to all sorts of extreme lengths. I mean, there's no doubt at all that when they wanted to get the right legal references last week at that very important meeting, and our argument was that our argument was that Jeremy didn't need any nomination nominations because the rule was quite clear, as explained by Michael Mansfield and the person of the Labour Party, Mark Henderson. But because Mark Henderson said what we said, namely he shouldn't need any nominations, they went out and paid a ton of money for a lawyer that would. In fact, I said to them, I says it's almost like switching your electricity bill. If you don't get the answer you want, then you get another one. And that's what really happened.
So, asking people who've signed up in the last 6 months to have to pay £25, effectively what is it, amounts to a surcharge.
Now,
does that not risk disenfranchising?
Some of us voted against that. Sadly, a number of people have left. I mean, that came at the very end of the meeting, when the main votes had been won. We'd had secured a victory by 18 to 14 for our argument, namely, the rule was in accordance with what Michael Mansfield and Mark Henderson and various other lawyers had said. And of course, everybody was so elated that some of them left. And the net result was they'd come with that paper. A number of us voted against the extortion amounts of money. And I believe, if I remember rightly, there was an amendment to halve it, which was better than 25, I think it was £12. So I think you should understand how it happened.
Has Ali gone, Dennis?
Somewhere.
I wonder if she's gone home, you know what I mean?
She just says, am I in the way? And I said, oh, she's there.
Oh, right.
So, in your opinion, is the parliamentary support for Jeremy Corbyn larger than what we have made out by the BBC?
If you are, I'll give you a lift.
Parliamentary support?
As the BBC report.
Well, there were some people on the left that didn't vote amongst those 40 because they quite properly believed that the PLP hadn't really got the power. I mean, if you look at the standing orders of the PLP, nowhere does it talk about a vote of that description.
So, would you confirm then, on top of that, that Tory boundary changes to constituencies is an attempt to further keep Labour out and keep the left from being an established power?
The estimate is, as was last time, if you remember, the coalition were going to do it, reduce it to 600, even though there are 850 non-elected peers of the realm in the other non-elected house. I mean, it really is a scandal that there's 200 more people in the non-elected house than there is in the elected house. So if there should be any pruning, it should be in the House of Lords. In fact, it ought to be abolished altogether.
Well, I would bring me to my next point, that given that the country's just been given a referendum on the EU membership, would it not now be in the public interest to have the same style of referendum on whether we should remain with the House of Lords and the monarchy, as one of the biggest reasons for the EU referendum was unelected bureaucrats ruling upon us? Should that same principle not be applied to the Lords and the monarchy?
Well, actually, I did move at the Labour Party conference in 1976, the abolition of the House of Lords, and it got carried by about 6 million votes. But when it went to the House of Commons and I moved it there, I managed 161, I think, out of a total of 640 or whatever it was at that time.
So, with regards to the House of Commons, would you agree with me in saying that most of the modern politicians we see in there nowadays, rather than treating their role as a vocation where they serve their communities and their constituencies for the better of the country as a whole, they seem more interested in furnishing their own careers for when they're then able to move on into new pastures?
Now, I would put it this way. When you go to Parliament, you're elected. It's a democratic vote. When you get inside Parliament, most of the decisions that are made for your personal benefit are based on patronage. I took a decision when I went to Parliament in 1970, 3 big principles. One, don't go in the bars. Why? because we weren't allowed to go down the pit
Yeah.
where I used to work, stinking of ale.
Yeah, of
You
course.
wouldn't be allowed.
Of course.
You'd be a danger to somebody. And so I thought, not because I'm puritanical, but I don't want to be mixing with Tories
Of course.
and so on in the bar, and right-wing journalists who infest the place. So that was number one. Second was don't pair with the Tories or any of the Liberals or whatever. Don't pair. In other words, make an arrangement with an individual on the opposite side to be absent together.
Yeah.
I think that I had to make a stand on that, so I did on the first day, and I've kept to it ever since. And the third one is don't go on foreign trips paid for by the British taxpayer and or dodgy governments.
Of course.
And so I've stuck to that through 46 years. People thought I was a bit of an eccentric when I said it, but I have been able to prove that I've kept to those principles. So what I'm trying to tell you is that whilst ever that patronage reigns supreme in the Houses of Parliament, then it will get used by others. That is where the problem lies, in my view.
So, would you say now that, given we've had so many scandals over the last few years, what with MPs fraudulent expenses claims, the references to currently going on in the news of Tory election fraud, where they're alleged to have overspent on their local budgets for elections, are the country and the people of the country ready for a new form of politics, and are they ready to see an end to establish?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Jeremy was trying to espouse those views when he got elected by those 250,000 plus votes. He still does. I don't think he'll change in that regard at all, and that's why we're seeing a new kind of politics in countries all over the world.
Yeah.
But it has to be a left-wing brand of politics, not like that lot in France, where it's the so-called new kind of politics is Le Pen, which is an ultra-right-wing group. I want to see a left-wing growth taking place in all countries, if possible, of the kind that Jeremy espouses. And I think the country's ready for it.
I would agree with you. I think the country it's seen enough of establishment where it seems like we're being told this is the way it is, and they want to see change. They want to see progressive change. Do you know what I mean? Like we're in the year 2016, and we should be miles ahead of where we are. But it seems that we seem to resolve against the same old bickering of Tories.
And plus the fact we have to make a stand against austerity Britain.
Oh yes, definitely.
We have to vote against cuts like I do on a regular basis. Student loans, all those things that are crippling people amongst the working class. And we have to do it and make sure that, like on Monday, I'll probably be in a tiny minority, I will be voting against spending £100 billion on Trident.
On weapons that are born to vaporise people.
And similarly, HS2, which I think is a con, quite frankly.
I personally believe that the money that has been dedicated to HS2 would be far better off being reinvested into the existing networks.
Absolutely, electrification of the Midland line. I mean, you could all come up with 101 different ways of improving the rail, and the railway unions will benefit as a result, but it doesn't have to be to get to London 30 minutes faster.
No,
that to me is crazy when you're considering 52 billion pounds. And by the way, I'm against fracking. And we had a great victory here not 2 miles away in Calo against it. The people campaigned against it, and we managed, the Derbyshire County Council Labour majority turned it down. And to me, in answer to your further question is yes, I opposed it not just at Calo, but anywhere.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.